Molly, thank you so much for joining us for National Careers Week. Really appreciate you being here. Do you want to start by just telling us a little bit about you? What do you do and who do you work for?
Yes, sure. Delighted to be here. Thank you. So my name's Molly, and I'm a curator, producer, and journalist. Um, I am working sort of across the arts, design, and sort of media world. My full time job currently is working as a curator at Artiq, and that's an international art agency that curates art collections for commercial spaces. So that's corporate spaces across law, finance, tech, but also hospitality spaces, so hotels.
Amazing. And so your career background as well is not pure art, as we were talking about it just before we started recording. So tell us a bit about your journey to where you are now.
Yeah, and it's been a long journey actually. I've pivoted a couple of times, and I think that's probably one of the key learnings that I can really share. Way back when I was growing up, I thought I was going to be an actor. My background was really in sort of theatre and acting, and that taught me a great deal about thinking on my feet, speaking live. As a creative, it taught me a great deal. Um, and I actually ended up going to study in Amsterdam, a course called Literary and Cultural Analysis. And that was because at that point I was really interested in sort of writing about theatre and writing about culture. And then I ended up studying a degree at Central St Martin's in culture, criticism, and curation, which is quite a broad degree where you learn a lot of skill sets across sort of art criticism, curation, and sort of broader cultural world sort of skill sets. So a kind of interesting trajectory. And I certainly had an understanding of what I was really passionate about and my kind of unique skill set, which I was sort of refining. But I didn't know the job that I do now even existed when I was, applying to university. So I think that's one thing to definitely bear in mind. The job market will look different in 10 years' time. And as long as you sort of understand what your unique offering is and you continue to refine that, then you're kind of going in the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's such a good point. We had, in fact, on Monday, we had a whole session all about create tech, AI, the future of the
Mhm.
industries. And you make such a good point about the fact that the landscape will look very different. So you've got to keep flexing, you've got to keep moving, make sure that you're kind of keeping an open mind for what you might want to do.
Completely. And the skills are transferable, right? And I think that's a really important point to make, that you may feel, if you want to move into a different industry, intimidated at the thought that perhaps you didn't train traditionally within that particular field, and that you might not have all of the skills or the knowledge that you need. Um, whilst obviously accumulating that knowledge is really important to be operating at like that industry standard, actually your unique offering could well be, as it was for me, that you've come from a different background, that you come with a different perspective, with an awareness of different processes and conventions. And so yeah, I think that certainly was really important for me, coming from a kind of theatre background into the sort of exhibition space, and actually seeing a real similarity between those two spaces in that they're a place for storytelling and bringing different elements together in their sort of most effective proportions to really engage the imagination of the audience, or the listener, or the client, or the guest, whatever it is. And yeah, so just the importance of really transferable skill sets and being open to kind of applying what you know elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a brilliant. I mean, so true. There's so much to take away from there. Um, so when you actually started working in the art world, when you
Yeah.
started doing what you're doing now,
Yes.
what kinds of areas of the industry were you surprised by? Were you kind of taken aback by? Things, talk about the stuff that you didn't know
Mm,
was there that really,
mm,
I guess, did surprise you.
mm. I think the really unique aspect of my job as a curator, which isn't a conventional curatorial job, right? So it's not within the context of a museum or right in the heart of the art world in that sense, in a more traditional sense. We curate spaces outside of the gallery context. So our audience, more often than not, aren't necessarily art world people. And I think that was really, a really enlightening and delightful and actually really key part of why I wanted to take the role at Artiq, because it meant that, it was about engaging people in art that don't necessarily think that art's for them, and giving them a language to kind of understand it and make it feel like it's personalized to them. And I think one of the things that, in some ways, I might have anticipated it or somehow known it, but I think really surprised me just how much this is the case, that people, highly intelligent people who work, at the top of their game in other industries, don't feel well versed in art and don't feel necessarily like it is for them, that it could possibly apply to their experience. And either they don't necessarily fully appreciate its value, or they just feel really intimidated by trying to engage with it. And so, yeah, I would say that that's one thing that dawned on me. And I think if you are somebody who has the capacity to communicate, the power and the potential of what art can do for people, that is a very, very I guess, unique and important skill set to hone in on, because it's very rewarding when you engage people in art that perhaps surprise themselves when actually it means something to them.
Yeah, no, I think there's so much about this interview that is really shedding light on this idea that the art world, or I guess being creative, is so much bigger than a minute specific job. Like you're saying, you work with so many people who are not involved in the art world but want to kind of have that translator almost between them and art. And then, the people who are actually involved in the art world are not this really traditional concept of everyone's an artist. It's like there's skills and all this, lots of different types of people, isn't there?
Yeah, for sure.
Very varied indeed. I love that. I think that's such a good takeaway. And what are the best and worst bits of your job? Because obviously no job is perfect. And so yours is a very cool, very interesting role, but surely there's got to be some bad bits.
Yeah. Let's start with the bad bits. I'd say if we're talking in those terms, and this could be a helpful little bit of actionable advice, which I know is a key part of this talk. So I work on multiple projects simultaneously. And if you are, as I'm sure many of the people listening are, they have a perfectionist streak, let's say, or they, if they are a creative, then the work is sort of never done, right? You can constantly refine it. And that's certainly the case for my job as well. Unlike, I suppose, in other industries where the task can be complete in a more clear and literal sense. When you're working, obviously, on multiple projects simultaneously, and you have a finite amount of time, you have to apply the kind of minimal effective dose idea, where you move on once you've met the brief, and once what you need to achieve with that particular task, it can be achieved. And I would say that that's probably one of the worst and hardest and most challenging parts of being somebody who's operating as a creative within commercial spaces, because it's fast paced, and it's high expectations, and it's long hours, and you have to accept, however challenging that might be, that you need to move on from a particular task in order to really fully kind of occupy and seize the whole role and all the projects that you've got going on, and to create space between all of those, kind of that deep work for blue sky thinking, to allow your creativity to really thrive, to go to an exhibition, to have thoughtful conversations. So I would say that's probably one of the worst parts. But in a way, it links very nicely to, I suppose, one of the best, which is that you can have such a diverse array of experiences. You know, one minute you are, you know, speaking to an artist about their practice and learning all about, you know, specific techniques. And the next you're talking in front of a, you know, a room of clients, you know, pitching a particular commission that you might want to install within their office space, or flying over to, you know, a different country and working on a hotel there and curating that hotel with local artists' work. So it really is a multifaceted, uses your whole brain job that kind of is extremely rewarding, hands-on and creative.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound very varied, very diverse. I
Yeah.
mean, the amount of anecdotes you must have about working with different clients and all that. I wish we
Mm.
had more time to get into that. Um, so, if you weren't doing what you were doing now, what do you think you would be doing, either in the art world or elsewhere?
God, that's a really, really good question. Um, that's a really good question. What would I be doing? You know, I think there's lots of other things that my skill set could apply to. And I don't mean that in an arrogant sense. I mean it in a sense that I think my skills are very transferable, and I'm very passionate about all sorts of kind of parts of culture and different disciplines. So I would kind of have the passion and drive in other areas as well. Um, I think I think in a sense, you know, working in education would be really interesting. You know, all of those that interest and skills around communicating to people and you know, sharing knowledge and you know, being somebody who facilitates learning and thought. I think that could apply there. Um, so yeah, that, I mean, is that a good answer?
Hey, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think you hit upon something very important there, which is again the transferable skills thing. You know, you can't don't ever box yourself in. You know, take a look at what you have and how you can apply it elsewhere in other roles, and you'll see that the options are kind of endless. I think that that is a fantastic takeaway.
Hmm.
So, okay, in our final couple of minutes, what
Yeah.
is your key advice? I know you've mentioned quite a lot of things already, which is amazing. Key advice for young people who might want to either pursue the same career path as you, or
Mm.
just want to get their foot in the door of the art world.
Mm. I would say figure out what your unique offering is. You know, what is it that you could really shine at? Like, where is it? What is it that you know about yourself? And I don't mean just like a subject, like, oh, I'm good at English or I'm good at art. I mean, specifically within that subject, what is it that both you feel passionate about and that you could excel at? And I would continue to refine that so that you can operate at a really high level. Like, that's the thing. That's why someone wants to hire you, right? Because you can do that thing really well. And then I would also be really honest with yourself about the areas of improvement and try and make them more interesting for yourself. Like, I didn't think that I would ever be sat in front of a spreadsheet, and I pretty much am every day, right? It's really important that I'm across the budgets for my projects. But that's within the context of something that I'm pretty passionate about. So maths became interesting again. I mean, I hated maths at school. So I would say, yeah, figure out what it is, your strengths and weaknesses, which sounds like an obvious one, but I really mean specific skills there. And talk to people, like go to the spaces where you would like to work and connect with people. And I know it's nerve-wracking. Do not underestimate the kind of the power of a hello and an introduction and just starting that conversation. I know, yeah, when you enter into new environments, or, you know, any kind of, whether it be a museum or an art gallery or whatever it is, you know, it can feel kind of intimidating and, oh, I don't know who this person is, or, you know, I don't want to seem too eager. I would just say, you know, connecting with people, keeping a record of the people that you meet within those spaces, reaching out, following up. All of that is so important, building that network, because you never know, there might be an opportunity that comes up that you're able to draw on those connections, and seek advice. like seek advice, like seek mentors, people that inspire you. They might not have the exact job that you want, but they might know a thing or two about the industry that you want to work in, and get their perspective.
Absolutely. That is a whole load of fantastic advice there. Thank you so much.